The scene opens in the depths of a dark, winding dungeon. A priestess named Sarah, with long, light-colored hair, chants a spell, "Let there be light." As she holds a glowing orb to her chest, a gentle light emanates, illuminating the seemingly endless spiral staircase below them. The scene reveals the full party of adventurers, dubbed the All-Stars. In the foreground is the knight Sesma, clad in heavy plate armor. Beside him are the priestess Sarah, a sturdy dwarf with a horned helmet and a large hammer named Moradin, and a man with short brown hair named Tuck. In the back, the tall, robed mage Prospero stands next to another mysterious figure cloaked in dark robes. They appear ready to face the challenges of the dungeon. Sarah turns to the knight, Sesma, and chides him for the limited duration of his light spell. She demands he cast a stronger one, but Sesma curtly refuses. Annoyed, Sarah threatens to stop protecting him or healing him from paralysis, but her threat ends in a frustrated grunt. Nearby, Tuck smirks at the party's bickering. He condescendingly remarks on how tough humans have it, being unable to see in the dark like other races can. He tells the dwarf, Moradin, to keep his unhelpful comments to himself. Tuck quickly backpedals, saying he knows that neither he nor a dwarf can see in the pitch-black dungeon. He then turns his attention to Sarah, advising her to be gentler with her words when correcting someone's behavior. Sarah simply replies with a drawn-out, sarcastic okay. As they descend the stairs, Sarah complains that her feet are killing her and asks the robed mage, Prospero, if they are proceeding to the next level yet. Prospero, holding his staff, confirms her thoughts, stating that the depth of this dungeon transcends human knowledge. Gazing down into the seemingly bottomless spiral staircase, Sarah marvels at the place. She questions if it's truly a natural dungeon and not something constructed, wondering about its purpose, its creator, and its age. From behind his helmet, the knight Sesma gives a simple, determined answer to her questions. That's why we're here. To find out. Having finally reached a new, lower level, the party pauses. Sesma asks a masked rogue named Hawkwind if there's any sign of the enemy. Hawkwind reports that there's none. Below, the faces of Sarah, Prospero, Moradin, and Tuck show a mix of relief and anticipation. The narration describes the new area as an untouched level, a place where no one has set foot before. It is a realm untrodden, where danger and threat lie in wait, and where any one of them might lose their life. The party stands before a grand, ornate doorway. The narration continues, stating that beyond this entrance, riches and glory await. More than anything, the thrill of venturing into uncharted territory is what drives them. Yet what of it, the narration exclaims. Prospero poses the question, what kind of adventurer fears to press onward? He declares that it's in their very blood and flesh to thrive on the path ahead. The others look on, their resolve hardened. Filled with determination, Sesma takes a confident step forward, ready to breach the new territory. He says, "All right. Let's go," but then suddenly stops dead in his tracks. Sarah, who was walking behind Sesma, bumps into his back with an "Oh." She angrily yells at him for stopping so suddenly and starts firing off questions, asking if he's seen a trap, an enemy, or if he's been paralyzed. Watching the exchange, Tuck asks Moradin what he's talking about, confirming that they are indeed the first adventurers to reach this level. Moradin reminds him that the great door at the stairs was sealed shut and no one has managed to pry it open. The rest of the party gathers around Sesma, asking him what's wrong and if he's really that spooked. Prospero asks for confirmation that the door was indeed sealed, and Sesma affirms, yes, it most certainly was. A feeling of dread washes over Sesma. If the door was sealed, that means no one could have gotten in or out. His gaze shifts towards the darkness ahead as he mutters, then. Suddenly, a horrifying, corpse-like figure with rotting flesh lunges out from the darkness. It holds a staff and screams a terrifying question, how do you explain that corpse? The scene shifts to a solemn and colorful ceremony inside a grand temple. Doves fly as the sacred walls reverberate with murmurs, prayers, and incantations. A body lies on a bier while people grieve and pray for the departed. The title of Chapter 1, Eye Rumors, is revealed. The focus is on a mysterious man with white hair wearing a black hood, Irumas himself. He looks on with a cold expression while an elf-like woman prays earnestly in the foreground. The ceremony is not just for prayer, but to command. A man with spiky dark hair and a young girl with red hair cry in anguish over the coffin of someone named Rodan. The man yells out Rodan's name in disbelief and sorrow, unable to accept their death. The coffin, and the body within, turns completely to a pile of ash. The mourners are left weeping over the remains. From a distance, the cloaked figure Irumas watches and coldly remarks, "Too bad." The grieving man, Gantz, turns on Irumas in a rage. But Irumas is unfazed, stating that with 2 deaths, it is time for payment. He declares his intention to take half of the equipment and money from the 2 people he brought back. Gantz is enraged that Irumas would bring up money at a time like this, screaming at him in fury. But Irumas calmly dismisses his anger, telling him there's no need to make such a fuss. Gantz lunges forward and grabs Irumas by the cloak, calling him a bastard. As a woman tries to intervene, Irumas remains completely indifferent to the outburst, stating with chilling finality, "They just turned to ash, that's all." The elf-like nun, Sister Anarchy, continues to lecture the grieving Gantz. She claims that death is merely a sign that they lived a good life and were pardoned to enter the city of God, showing no sympathy for his loss. Gantz can't believe what he's hearing, asking if she's saying it's okay that they died. He accuses her of botching the resurrection and incinerating them. Anarchy coldly replies that they turn to ash and no one can change that, as it's common sense to live well and die well. Standing before the grand altar of the temple, Anarchy loudly proclaims, "We did not fail." Her voice echoes through the massive, empty hall. Gantz presses her, asking why they died. With a serene, almost beatific smile, Anarchy explains that God deemed they lived the best lives they could, and therefore, there is no need for them to come back. She calls their ultimate death a valorous thing. Anarchy clarifies that they are only allowed to delay death if there's a possibility the person's companions will do even greater good. Gantz realizes she's implying they should pay more. Anarchy smiles slyly, stating that otherwise, God won't be convinced. Furious, Gantz storms out, shouting, "Blasted cants!" Anarchy retorts, "How rude," while the little red-haired girl follows him. An older man with a magnificent white beard apologizes to Irumas for the outburst. Iruma says he doesn't blame Gantz for losing his cool, acknowledging that recovering from losing a sorcerer and a priest is tough. The old man agrees, stating their leader is agitated and not thinking straight. He laments that their party's progress has been slow lately, as Gantz continues to mourn Rodan in the background. Irumas, ever the professional, turns to the old man and asks for his payment. He adds a chilling warning, if the man fails to settle the tab, Irumas will simply abstain from retrieving him during their next encounter. The old man agrees to pay, shaking Irumas' hand. He asks Irumas to bring them back if he spots them in the dungeon. As the old man leaves, Irumas tells him to advise Gantz not to let the loss get to him too much. With their business concluded, Irumas and Sister Anarchy walk away from the altar, leaving the grand hall of the temple. As they walk, Anarchy asks Irumas why he thinks Gantz got so angry. She then forcefully insists that the resurrection did not fail, claiming it's a mistake to think so. She argues that God thought those people had lived valuable lives, so there was no need to do things over. Finally, she points a finger at Irumas, reminding him that he has yet to show God his own value. Irumas admits his gratitude for his own resurrection but states he doesn't believe he bears the responsibility for it. Anarchy retorts that his bad attitude is what keeps God from recognizing his life as one of greater value. She lectures him, saying he must show God that he can live a better life. Irumas tells Sister Anarchy that to live a better life means he'll have to go collect more corpses. Anarchy replies that she doesn't particularly mind that, but trails off. Irumas states that he's an adventurer, not a retriever. He asks if anyone he might know has been brought in. Anarchy sadly tells him no and suggests he doesn't get his hopes up. Irumas, looking determined, says he can't do that and walks away. As he walks away from the temple under a sky filled with crows, Irumas' inner monologue reveals his true motivation: I have to keep going until I find my companions. Otherwise, I can't move on. The scene shifts to a tavern where two shadowy figures are watching Iruma's. They identify him, contemptuously calling him the damn maggot. As Iruma's walks through the city streets, citizens whisper about him. They call him Iruma's of the Black Rod and a filthy corpse looter. They gossip that he was resurrected by mistake and call him a lucky bastard. This reputation precedes him, a fact rooted in ancient times when God forgot his true story. The story provides exposition about the dungeon, a cryptic realm beyond human comprehension that one day made an abrupt return to the world, appearing as a massive chasm in a desolate, icy landscape. The dungeon was filled with man-eating monsters and lethal traps. Humanity, a collective of abject weaklings, converged in its depths. However, there was no shortage of people who ventured into this abyss seeking wealth, fame, and glory. Over time, some gradually adapted, learning to survive by repeatedly dying, overcoming danger, and seizing treasure. And in time, as a figure cloaked in a dark hood emerges from the shadows, the narration concludes that people came to call these individuals adventurers. Back in the present, Iruma stands at a dungeon entrance, looking at a map. He muses, now then. How far down should I go today? He clarifies to himself that he's not there to clear the dungeon, anyway. He crouches by the remains of a less fortunate adventurer, remarking that his progress all depends on the clients ahead of him, implying he follows other parties to retrieve their bodies when they fall. Entering a chamber, Iruma discovers a scene of carnage. Several large, brutish bodies are strewn across the floor. He identifies them as orcs. His gaze is sharp, taking in the details of the fight. Iruma examines one of the dead orcs. He notes that its wounds look far from fatal, quickly deducing that the adventurers who fought it were likely rookies. He observes that only the killing blow was executed precisely, suggesting it was done by a veteran. He surmises that a party of rookies and an experienced adventurer must have continued deeper into the dungeon. The map illustrates a rule of the dungeon: each burial chamber is limited to one group of monsters, which do not respawn for a while after being defeated. Iruma scoffs at the notion of a cleared path being safe. Safe, hey, he muses to himself, his expression filled with cynicism. He knows the truth. Even in a cleared area, some monsters still roam, and traps are plentiful. He watches as two large, wolf-like monsters patrol a hallway. Iruma finds the lengths people go to for a semblance of safety to be absurd, especially since the most significant sacrifice is abandoning any chance for glory or treasure. Iruma reflects on the paradox of his own job, forsaking his own adventure just to search for another adventurer's corpse. He pulls out a circular, ornate medallion, deciding it's about time he used it. He dangles the medallion, and the wolf-like creatures in the hall are immediately drawn to it. They stop, their attention fixed on the object. One of the creatures has a sword stuck in its back, a clear sign of a recent battle. Iruma tosses the medallion onto the stone floor of the dungeon corridor. It lies there, gleaming faintly in the darkness, a lure for the unsuspecting monsters. The wolf creatures cautiously approach the medallion. As they do, Iruma, hidden in the shadows, raises a hand and conjures a glowing orb of light. He stands at the end of the hall, having successfully bypassed the monsters. Continuing deeper into the dungeon, Iruma enters a new chamber. The acrid smell of scorched flesh and burned blood hangs heavy in the air, indicating another recent and violent encounter. He inspects the aftermath of an explosion trap, likely triggered by someone messing up while opening a treasure chest. Seeing no corpses, he figures the adventurers must have escaped. He dismisses the idea that they were wiped out, as other adventurers would have pulled out the bodies. Surely not, he thinks, as he prepares to press onward. Suddenly, a loud beeping alarm starts to blare through the dungeon. Iruma recognizes it as a trap designed to summon monsters. He quickly realizes it's not in his current chamber, but further ahead. He spins around, sensing the direction of the new danger. Iruma is exasperated. He calls the previous party idiots for bringing a skilled fighter, setting off a bomb, and then recklessly pressing onward only to trigger another trap. He peeks around a corner and hears a grunt of effort. The sound is from a lone, cloaked figure with a horned helmet, who swings a massive sword, cutting down a foe with a powerful strike. This lone warrior is surrounded by the corpses of the pig-faced orcs Irumas saw earlier. The warrior pants, exhausted from the fight. Irumas watches from the doorway, counting 5 bodies in total. The mysterious warrior stands victoriously atop the pile of slain orcs, their longsword resting on their shoulder. This is the skilled veteran Irumas had theorized about. The figure pulls back their hood, revealing the face of a young, battered but determined person with braided hair. Their name is Aniki, and she has a heavy, locked metal collar around her neck. From the shadows, Irumas notices the collar and the heavy chain attached to it. He realizes with dawning horror what he is witnessing. Irumas understands the grim reality. He's heard of this tactic before, adventurers taking advantage of youngsters, stripping them of their possessions, and then using them as a meat shield to absorb enemy attacks. Aniki now stands alone, surrounded by new, larger bull-headed monsters. One of the massive, minotaur-like monsters raises its club, its eye flickering with killing intent. Aniki is its target, and the rest of the beast men close in. The largest of the bull-headed monsters, wielding a massive club, looms over the exhausted Aniki, ready to strike her down. As the monster swings, Aniki lets out a terrified scream. But from the doorway, Irumas calmly chants a spell, "Flames, come forth." Irumas points a finger and shoots a precise stream of fire. The blast doesn't hit the monster, but instead strikes the lock on Aniki's collar, shattering it instantly. Aniki looks on in shock. The heavy metal collar clatters to the ground. The lead monster looks back, surprised by the sound. Aniki, now free, looks down at her neck, a new determination in her eyes. The minotaur-like monsters turn their attention away from Aniki and toward Irumas, who stands calmly in the doorway, having drawn their aggression onto himself. Irumas points towards the monsters, giving the newly freed Aniki a simple command, "Do as you please." Aniki looks at him, understanding dawning in her bruised eyes. With a wild bark of exertion, Aniki turns her rage upon the remaining orcs. She throws herself into the fray, leaping at the nearest monster with her massive sword swinging in a brutal arc. Unleashed, Aniki becomes a whirlwind of violence. Her blade cuts through the pig-faced orcs with squeals and grunts, repaying her captors for their cruelty with savage, bloodthirsty revenge as she tears them apart. Irumas calmly walks past as the last surviving monster, a pig-faced orc, scrambles to its feet and makes a desperate escape down the dark corridor. Aniki, still full of adrenaline, barks and prepares to give chase, but Irumas holds up a hand to stop her. He calmly tells her that there's nothing to be gained by killing it now. Aniki gestures to the bodies of the adventurers who used her as a meat shield, asking Irumas if he's going to resurrect them. He looks on, silently observing the scene. Irumas looks over the bodies and tells Aniki that if she wishes to resurrect them, she needs to bring money to the temple. His tone implies he has no intention of doing it himself. As Irumas turns to leave, a loud growl echoes in the chamber. It's not a monster, but Aniki's stomach, rumbling with hunger after her ordeal and fierce battle. Having formed an unlikely alliance, the pair venture forth together. Irumas, the corpse retriever, and Aniki, the warrior he freed, walk down the long dungeon corridor, heading towards a new destination, the city veiled in grey. The scene opens in a bustling tavern, a stark contrast to the dark dungeon. A man in full plate armor, Irumas, spots the hooded Sesma eating with a young, scruffy boy. Recognizing the boy from his past, Irumas mockingly calls him garbage, while calling out a Mifune to get Sesma's attention. Irumas apologizes for using the wrong name, asking if he can join them. Sesma, gesturing to the corpse of a monster being used as a seat, replies with cold indifference, if he isn't afraid of corpses, he's welcome. Completely unfazed, Irumas laughs it off, declaring he's not scared of something that's already dead. He cheerfully places a large order for ale, meat, and potatoes. Changing the subject, Irumas asks where the tall stars of their group are. This question triggers the young boy, Mifune, who, with a mouthful of food, angrily retorts, questioning if Irumas thinks he's partied up with garbage. Sesma calmly explains the situation. He states that Mifune simply started following him. Seeing the boy staring at his food, Sesma decided to feed him, treating him much like a stray animal one might find. Sesma continues his explanation, referring to Mifune directly by the nickname Garbage. Mifune, hearing this, lets out a shocked woof, looking utterly bewildered by the mean name. As the three of them eat together, Sesma remarks that Garbage sounds like a fine name to him, as it has more than one syllable, while Irumas continues to eat his meal. The story of how Mifune got his name is revealed. A slaver's cart was attacked near the town, and amid the harrowing scene of death, the attackers feasted on the cargo. Mifune was the sole survivor, a lone figure standing amongst the dead. Sesma finishes the story, not even the monsters that attacked the cart ate Mifune. He was the leftovers of the massacre, and for that reason, he was given the name Garbage. Irumas elaborates that Mifune is a slave who doesn't speak and acts like a stray dog, discovered by the people who found him after the incident. Sesma explains that adventurers tried to use Mifune as a disposable decoy, but he miraculously survived. Irumas, surprised, realizes Sesma didn't actually buy the boy as he had initially thought. Irumas presses Sesma, saying he could have just saved Mifune instead of letting him tag along. Sesma clarifies his stance: he isn't villainous enough to buy and sell people, but he's no saint either. He is simply neutral. Sesma reflects on his philosophy, noting that it's not easy to maintain a neutral balance. He muses that perhaps killing techniques require a certain amount of evil, before casually warning Irumas. As he casually gnaws on a bone, Irumas speculates on Mifune's past, guessing that the boy's original party or clan might have been wiped out. Mifune, overhearing the talk about a clan, barks in protest. Sesma states that it's not his problem, as the boy started following him on his own. It seems Mifune doesn't think it's an issue either. Sesma concedes the point with a slight smirk as Irumas and Mifune share a light-hearted moment in the background, the tension of the conversation seemingly forgotten. Irumas jokes about Sesma's willingness to sleep next to corpses, but Sesma's nonchalant attitude about the dead leaves him with nothing more to say than a simple touché. However, Irumas' expression turns thoughtful. He takes another look at Mifune, a flicker of recognition in his eyes as he tries to place the boy's familiar face. Mifune himself seems lost in thought, his gaze distant as if recalling a faint memory, perhaps triggered by the mention of his past. Later, Sesma leads Mifune down the wooden hallway of the inn, the monster corpse seat from the tavern now being carried on his back. They enter their room for the night. As Mifune stands near the bed, Sesma turns to him and calls out, getting his attention. Mifune, exhibiting his dog-like tendencies, lies down on the floor and lets out a small whine, as if asking for permission or clarification. Startled, Mifune is grabbed by Sesma, his animal-like instincts causing him to flinch away from the sudden movement. With a startled yelp, Mifune is suddenly lifted into the air and tossed by Sesma, landing squarely on the room's only bed. As Mifune looks on in confusion, Sesma points to the floor, stating that it's his designated spot. In a gruff, indirect show of care, he tells the boy that if he's going to sleep, it will be on the bed. Mifune, confused by the act of kindness, lets out a questioning woof. Sesma, already settling down on the hard floor, tells him to not mind him and just go to sleep. Obediently, Mifune curls up on the bed. As he rests on the floor, Sesma reflects on his age. He feels that preferring a hard surface over a bed is more comfortable, like sleeping in a stable. The desire for comfort, like a bed, is a sign that it's time to quit being an adventurer. Under the light of the moon, Sesma's thoughts drift to his past life. The cold, hard floor and the scent of death are realities that have been etched into his very being, defining who he is. The next day, Sesma and Mifune head out, their footsteps echoing in the dungeon. Mifune, with his unique footwear, follows closely behind his new master. As they walk through the town's outer paths, Mifune follows Sesma with the loyalty of a stray dog that has found its owner. Sesma leads them back into the familiar, treacherous environment of the dungeon. Mifune looks to him for guidance, letting out a small yaps as they venture deeper. They arrive at a large chasm. With grim pragmatism, Sesma decides that since he's already carrying the monster corpses, he might as well use them to create a path forward. After placing the corpses as stepping stones, Sesma demonstrates his agility with a running leap across the gap. Mifune, ever the mimic, follows his lead precisely, jumping right after him and landing safely. Impressed by the boy's ability to keep up, Sesma offers a rare compliment, "Nice trick." Mifune responds with a delighted, dog-like bow, clearly happy to have earned his master's approval. Their path leads them to a massive, ancient-looking gate. Sensing the potential danger beyond, Sesma tells Mifune that he doesn't have to be a part of what comes next, giving him a chance to leave. Mifune crouches on the ground, seemingly unbothered by the imposing gate or the implied danger. He lets out a casual laugh, showing his intent to stay by Sesma's side. Suddenly, the quiet is broken. A group of armed figures appears on the cliffs above them. Mifune senses the threat immediately, letting out a sharp, warning woof. The figures are revealed to be a party of adventurers, or perhaps something more sinister, looking down on the pair with hostile intent. Sesma notes how long it took for them to appear. Their leader, a brutish man with an eye patch, speaks, mistakenly calling Sesma Iarumas and declaring that Mifune belongs to them. In response to their claim, Sesma coolly points out a flaw in their logic: Mifune isn't even wearing a slave's chain. Mifune himself reacts with a defiant hiss. The slave hunter leader cuts off any attempt at negotiation. He declares that they're done talking, adding that in the lawless depths of the dungeon, words are meaningless anyway. The confrontation explodes into violence as one of the slave hunters lunges forward, and Mifune lets out a fierce howl. The battle is joined. Another attacker is swiftly knocked aside, while Sesma calmly draws his blade to engage their leader. The leader orders his men to surround them. Sesma quickly assesses the situation: 6 enemies against the 2 of them. The slave hunters split their forces, with 3 moving to flank them from behind, attempting to box the pair in. Now completely surrounded, Sesma and Mifune stand back to back, with 3 attackers positioned in front and 3 behind. Mistaking Sesma for a spellcaster due to his robes, the leader yells at his men not to give him time to cast. Sesma's sharp eyes scan his opponents, noting they are all thieves or combatants, with no mags among them. The hunters charge, yelling for their mage to die. But Sesma moves with blinding speed, a blur of motion that leaves them attacking empty air as he repositions himself. Confirming their fatal mistake, Sesma thinks to himself, "Okay." The leader, still believing him to be a mage, charges forward shouting, "Drop dead, mage," determined to prevent any spell casting, completely unaware he's rushing to his own doom. The slave hunter leader is caught completely off guard, his shout turning into a choked her. Before he can process what's happening, Sesma closes the distance in an instant, his blade flashing in a deadly arc that decapitates the overconfident attacker. Standing over the leader's fallen body, Sesma reveals his weapon, not a staff, but a katana. He coolly states that he doesn't recall ever saying he was a mage, leaving the remaining hunters utterly shocked at their fatal miscalculation. While the hunters are stunned, Mifune lets out a feral growl and springs into action. Showing surprising speed and agility, he charges towards the remaining enemies, creating a chaotic opening. Mifune weaves through the enemy ranks, his movements a blur. The hunters, caught off guard by the boy's ferocity, struggle to react as he cuts them down. With a powerful slash, Mifune tears through 2 more of the slave hunters, their bodies falling as he continues his relentless assault. In the wake of their combined, lightning-fast assault, only 2 hunters remain standing. Sesma calmly assesses the situation, noting, 2 to go, as Mifune lets out a triumphant yelp. One of the last 2 survivors lets out a desperate war cry and charges forward. Sesma watches him approach, his expression calm and his blade ready. In a single, fluid motion, Sesma sidesteps the desperate attack, cleanly severing the man's arm and ending his life before he can even land a blow. Sesma stands over another one of his victims, who is bleeding out from a fatal wound. He coldly remarks that it's tough luck they don't have a priest, before musing on the problem of them potentially leaving the dungeon. A grim smile plays on Sesma's lips as he considers the alternative. If his enemies can't escape the dungeon, it makes his job of ensuring there are no witnesses or future threats a lot easier. He approaches the final, wounded hunter on the ground. The man shrieks in terror, and Mifune watches, his face a mask of horror at the cold-blooded execution he is about to witness. With a swift, merciless strike, Sesma finishes the wounded man. His grim task almost complete, he notes that there is only one person left. The last surviving slave hunter, seeing his comrade slaughtered, panics and makes a desperate run for it, scrambling up a nearby ladder. Sesma watches him flee with a look of cynical disdain, remarking on his greed for life. Mifune, not wanting to see more killing, barks and yelps, seemingly trying to stop Sesma from pursuing the fleeing man. Sesma explains his ruthless logic: if they wipe everyone out, there's no one left to pay for resurrection, and thus, no one to seek revenge. Sesma stands tall, embodying the harsh reality of their world. He explains that you can't just leave the dungeon. An adventurer is an adventurer precisely because he can't leave. Letting an enemy escape is a future threat he's unwilling to allow. Overwhelmed by the brutal lesson, Mifune clenches his fists and screams in frustration at the cruel, inescapable nature of their lives. Sesma simply watches, his lesson delivered. Standing amidst the carnage, Sesma quietly counts the bodies, bringing the total number of people he's dealt with to 10. The battle is over. All that remains are 10 lifeless bodies and 2 adventurers. Breaking the silence, Sesma turns to Mifune and asks if he wants dinner. Mifune, returning to his simple reality, gives an affirmative laugh. The chapter ends, to be continued. Chapter 3, titled Araraja 1, opens on a grim, rain-soaked scene. A man stands in a dark doorway, drinking from a bottle, while another lies defeated on the wet ground. The ominous text declares, "There is no sanctuary for the powerless." A close-up reveals the fallen man is Sesma, bloodied and lying in the grime. A voice, perhaps his own conscience, echoes his despair: "You've done it again, haven't you?" The scene shifts to a flashback. A young female adventurer with pigtails scolds her companion, a spiky-haired boy. She asks if he was the one who messed up by opening a chest and releasing poison gas. He sits with a resentful look on his face. The girl continues her complaint, frustrated that their party members said the contents of the chest weren't enough and are now unfairly blaming the two of them for the failure. Her companion offers her a loaf of bread from their meager supplies. Surprised by the gesture, she looks at him and asks if he's sure. Reluctantly, she accepts the bread. She explains that if she saves leftovers, the others will just reduce her portion next time, so he should just take it. She worries about what they might do to her if she gains any weight. Despite their grim situation, the girl is full of ambition. She declares her plan to leave the clan, earn money, and give it back to her parents. With a determined smile, she tells her companion, "And you're joining me, Raraja." She turns the question on him, reminding him that he must have had his own ambitions when he chose to become an adventurer. Raraja grits his teeth, a fire in his eyes as he recalls his own motivations. The flashback ends, returning to the present moment of Sesma lying broken in the alley. He thinks about how, in his old party's eyes, he wasn't even worth killing. A moment of shock hits him as he realizes, against all odds, that he's still alive. Later, in a dilapidated courtyard, Sesma comes across a lively scene. A woman is vigorously washing something in a wooden tub, yelling that even adventurers need to clean themselves up. The woman is the elf nun, Anarchy, and she's forcefully scrubbing a terrified Mifune. Anarchy shouts her grimly practical philosophy: "You never know how you're going to die, so you need to be clean while you're still alive." Anarchy looks up and scolds Sesma, who is watching from a distance. She asks why the kid has so much blood caked on her and tells him to take better care of her. Sesma coolly replies that he doesn't, the kid just follows him around. As Anarchy continues to scrub the panicked Mifune, Sesma looks on. Something seems to click in his mind, and he says, "Hold on." Sesma finally realizes that the filthy child he'd dismissively nicknamed Garbage is, in fact, a girl. Anarchy, exasperated, yells at him, "God, you're hopeless." After her bath, a clean Mifune sits quietly in a sanctuary while Anarchy gently pats her hooded head. Sesma watches from the side as Anarchy asks the little girl if she's satisfied now. Anarchy cheerfully proclaims her life motto: "Those who live well, die well." Sesma, ever the cynic, looks at her skeptically and mutters, "Is that how it works?" Chaos erupts. Raraja, the boy from the flashback, suddenly sprints past and tries to kick Sesma. At the same time, Mifune crouches on the ground, growling and barking like a feral animal. After the commotion, things quiet down. Aniki asks Sesma if his next exploration will be a long one. He confirms he's planning to explore a deeper level and expects to be gone for a few days. Sesma explains that time in the dungeon is subjective. He measures his trips by how many supplies are consumed. Aniki notes he'll be going without any companions, mentioning he might have invited Sesma if he were around. Aniki teasingly asks if he doesn't have any friends, to which he tells her to leave him alone. Her expression then turns serious as she gestures to a hall filled with the corpses of fallen adventurers, warning him that he needs to know when to give up. Sesma asks if she's giving him a warning. Aniki replies with a somber truth, "In the dungeon, even finding the body of someone you know might be a meaningless discovery." A rare, faint smile appears on Sesma's face. He reminds her that despite his looks, he's still a priest. He adds that considering how long it took for him to be resurrected, he's getting on in years, implying his own death and return. Aniki uses an analogy to question his luck. He flipped a coin and it came up heads once, meaning his resurrection. But what will he do if it comes up tails the next time? Sesma seems unconcerned by the risk. With a confident smirk, he accepts his fate, stating that when his time comes, the next adventurer will simply take care of whatever he leaves behind. With their conversation finished, Sesma and Mifune depart for the dungeon. Aniki closes her eyes and prays, wishing them both a good life and a good death. As they walk away, Raraja, the boy from the flashback, is seen running off in the background. As they walk away, Mifune mentions that she feels like she recognizes the face of the pigtail-haired girl from the flashback, catching Aniki by surprise. Aniki watches them go, a warm smile on her face. She notes that, whatever the case, Sesma packed enough supplies for 2 people, a small sign that he has accepted his new companion. The story then shifts focus to Raraja, the boy from the flashback. He is now alone outside a tavern at night, desperately stuffing bread into his mouth as he curses his fate. Raraja is tormented by his thoughts. His companions are dead, and he was forced by his clan to team up with people he considered disposable pawns. He agonizes over what he can possibly do, wondering if he could resurrect his friends, and how. His situation is dire. He's a lone thief, unable to hunt monsters or find treasure on his own, and all the money he had managed to pilfer is gone. He is starving, and his frustration boils over. As Raraja sits alone at a table, a mysterious hooded figure approaches him from behind, asking for a moment of his time. Raraja looks up, startled. The figure reveals himself to be a sinister-looking old mage with a wide, unsettling grin. He observes that Raraja seems to be in dire straits and offers his assistance. Raraja is instantly wary, thinking the man looks fishy. Raraja attempts to politely refuse the offer, but the old mage places a hand on his shoulder, insisting. He claims that he also struggled when he was young and simply couldn't bear to watch a promising young man suffer. The mage presents Raraja with a full, steaming bowl of stew, calling it a token of their new acquaintance. He tells the boy that his body is his greatest asset and urges him to eat. Overwhelmed, Raraja can only agree. Forgetting his suspicion for a moment, Raraja devours the meal. The rich taste of rabbit meat is a warm, delicious sensation he hasn't felt in a long time. As Raraja weeps with the sheer relief of eating a delicious meal, the mage watches him from across the bustling tavern. With his target softened up, he reveals his true purpose. He has a job that he'd like Raraja to handle. Still lost in the ecstasy of the food, Raraja barely hears the mage's proposition. Thoughts of money, settling his grudge, and helping his companions flash through his mind as he wonders if the mage is even talking to him. The old mage's face twists into a horrifying grin as he reveals a component of his plan. He holds up a dark, spherical stone, telling Raraja that he'll be using it for the job. Raraja's focus is finally broken. He looks past the stone to the amulet around the mage's neck, realizing it's not just a piece of jewelry, but a broken shard of something. Meanwhile, Back in the dungeon, Sesma is growing exasperated with his companion. He pinches the bridge of his nose and asks Mifune why she insists on pouncing on every monster she sees. The scene illustrates his point, showing Mifune standing proudly atop a pile of dead monsters, letting out an innocent laugh, as if wondering what the problem is. Mifune's recklessness continues as she excitedly throws open a treasure chest, letting out a happy woof, while an annoyed Sesma can only shout her name in frustration. Sesma finally kneels down in front of Mifune, trying to get her to focus and listen to his instructions. He calmly explains that their priority on this run is to simply move on. They are to ignore treasure and monsters. Mifune seems to understand, letting out a small whine before barking excitedly. Sesma remains unconvinced. His skepticism is immediately proven right. Mifune gives a loud bow and points directly at the treasure chest she was supposed to ignore. Sesma sighs, wondering if she really understood him at all. Before Sesma can react, Mifune springs into action, kicking a floor tile and sending it flying, presumably to check for traps. Sesma watches, speechless at her unpredictable methods. Mifune happily skips ahead, thinking that exploring like this isn't so bad after all. Sesma watches her, a slight smile on his face, before his expression suddenly changes to one of concern. Just as he grows concerned, Mifune suddenly collapses to the ground with a pathetic whine. Sesma rushes to her side, immediately running through a list of dungeon-related ailments. Are you hurt? Poison, paralysis, or petrification? He continues down the list of ailments. Hunger? Exhaustion? To his exasperation, Mifune gives a cheerful yap, confirming it was nothing more than that. Okay, I got it. Sesma yells, flustered but relieved. With the simple matter resolved, Sesma declares it's time to make camp, a process with its own set of crucial survival steps. At the prospect of rest and food, Mifune's energy is instantly restored, and she jumps for joy with a happy arf. Sesma begins to set up camp, taking out a small bottle of holy water. He asks Mifune if it's her first time seeing it, and she gives the bottle a curious sniff before shaking her head. He explains his ritual for camping in a dungeon. Holy water, a must-have for adventurers, can create a barrier against threats. First, he checks the floor for traps, a process that secures their safety and helps calm his own nerves. As Sesma prepares the campsite, Mifune is already excited about their meal, holding up dried meat. Unseen by them, Raraja watches the pair from a dark corner, bridging the two parallel storylines. Suddenly, Raraja sprints out from the shadows, holding the dark stone the mage gave him. Sesma looks up in alarm as Raraja shouts. Recognizing the dangerous object, Sesma yells, "Fool, that stone is." Before Sesma can finish, Raraja hurls the stone at the ground in front of them, and it shatters in a blinding explosion of light. The force of the magical explosion blasts all three of them off their feet. It seems the sinister mage's job for Raraja was an ambush. When the light fades, the dungeon room is empty, save for the faint outline of Sesma's incomplete barrier. The three adventurers are gone. A title card reads, "To be continued." Raraja awakens with a gasp in a completely different location, a vast, grand hall with high, arched ceilings. He sits up, utterly bewildered, and cries out, "Where am I?" A grim voice cuts through his confusion. It's Sesma, who dryly comments, "You should be grateful we're not inside a rock." Raraja is stunned to see the others have been teleported with him. He mistakenly calls Sesma by the name Iarumas, and then recoils upon seeing Mifune, whom he knows as garbage. Mifune simply barks in response. Sesma grabs the terrified Raraja by his collar. Panicked, Raraja thinks he's about to die. Sesma coldly comments that it takes guts for a lone thief to be delving this deep in a dungeon. With a menacing look, Sesma gets straight to the point, demanding to know where a mere thief got his hands on a demon stone. Raraja, terrified and confused, can only stammer. Raraja quickly explains that he was at the tavern when a strange man, a mage, spoke to him. He recalls the strange, broken shard-like amulet the mage had around his neck. As Raraja stammers out his explanation, a slow, sinister smile spreads across Sesma's face. the pieces of the puzzle are clearly falling into place for him. Sesma's expression turns neutral as he demands the boy's name. Raraja. He answers. Sesma quietly absorbs this information, simply saying, I see. Stepping away, Sesma reveals a hidden talent. He begins to chant a spell, Dork Mimurif Peche, causing a word, Dumapik, to hang in the air as light emanates from his hand. Raraja looks on in shock, realizing that this man is a mage who can also wield a sword. Meanwhile, Mifune yaps in confusion as Sesma consults a magical map conjured by his spell. Consulting his compass and the magical map, Sesma determines that although they've been sent far away, they are still on the same dungeon level. Satisfied, he tosses a coin to check the path ahead for traps and prepares to move on. Sesma starts to walk down the dark corridor, but Mifune and Raraja hesitate. He stops and looks back at the two of them, asking, what, not tagging along? In the depths of a dimly lit dungeon, the adventurer Iarumas remarks to his companions that they don't get thrilling adventures like this very often. Beside him, the cheerful Raraja laughs, while a mysterious man in a black cloak simply smirks. As the party ventures deeper, Iarumas observes the cloaked man. He notes that the man uses a special item, a creeping coin, to check for traps, a clever trick. However, Iarumas remains watchful and suspicious. Iarumas' suspicion grows as he notices the cloaked man deliberately avoids treasure chests. From this, he deduces a critical weakness: the man can't actually disable traps, he can only detect their presence. The party's serious mood is broken by Raraja, who lets out an impatient laugh. Annoyed, Iarumas turns to her, wondering if she's telling him to walk faster, while the cloaked man looks on in silence. As they stand before a strange, dark void, the cloaked man questions Iarumas about a demon stone. Iarumas seems to recall the object, confirming its name with a question of his own. The cloaked man explains the terrifying power of the demon stone: when shattered, it turns everyone nearby to ash. However, a defective one might teleport people instead, as it did with them earlier. Iarumas smirks, wondering if the person who gave it to the cloaked man must have hated him. Raraja whines, completely bewildered at how casually Iarumas is discussing a failed attempt on his life. She can't believe he's acting as if it's no big deal, while Iarumas just looks tired of the whole conversation. The cloaked man asks Iarumas if he intends to kill him. Iarumas explains that in a dungeon, it's not unusual for adventurers with different alignments, be it lawful, good, or evil, to work together for a common goal. Iarumas continues his explanation, stating that true evil belongs to those who feign help only to demand payment later, or simply abandon you. It's a cruelty he knows all too well, reminding him of the people from his own clan. As they walk, Iarumas tells the cloaked man that since he is a corpse retriever, someone who recovers bodies from the dungeon, he figured they were on the same side. He tries to maintain a neutral stance, not wanting to get involved in alignments. Iarumas dismisses the idea of alignments being a big deal. As for Raraja, he admits he's not sure what to make of her. Meanwhile, the cloaked man reveals his true motive: Iarumas is not his enemy. Iarumas puzzles over the cloaked man's intentions. He reasons that the man might be keeping him alive for monetary reasons. If Iarumas dies, there's no one to pay to revive his fallen comrades, which would be a financial loss for the man. In the background, Raraja once again gets impatient. Iarumas contemplates his grim future. If he returns to the surface, he'll face punishment from the man who hired him. If he stays, his former clan might execute him. He's trapped between two terrible fates. Despite the hopelessness of his situation, a spark of determination appears in Iarumas' eyes. He decides to push aside his worries and focus on the one thing he knows for sure in this very moment: he is alive, and he will cling to that fact with everything he has. The party's path leads them to a massive, foreboding door. Having never explored this part of the dungeon, Iarumas voices a sliver of hope that familiar territory lies on the other side, though the expressions of his companions show only apprehension. Before Iarumas can decide, the cloaked man shoves Raraja forward, insisting they must go through. He argues that backtracking or finding another way is just as unpredictable and dangerous. Irumas is taken aback by the sudden push to advance. Irumas anxiously speculates on what lies beyond the door. He hopes for a simple hallway, because if it's a burial chamber, they will surely face monsters and likely die. The cloaked man, sensing his hesitation, nervously asks if they're actually going in. With a shared look of resolve, the decision is made. The cloaked man gives a firm yeah, and Irumas agrees. Raraja, caught up in the moment, lets out an excited bow, and charges forward, bursting through the doors with unrestrained energy. The doors splinter open, revealing a large, empty chamber. Raraja stands triumphantly in the center, having smashed through the entrance, while Irumas and the cloaked man follow her into the newly opened room. Their victory is short-lived. A massive, dark creature stirs from its slumber at the far end of the chamber. Irumas freezes in shock, stammering, "What's that?" as Raraja stares with a mix of fear and aggression. The creature unfurls its wings, revealing a draconic form. A D-dragon. Irumas stammers in disbelief. But the cloaked man, with a chillingly calm smile, corrects him, "No." The beast towers over them, its massive form filling the chamber as it lets out a low growl. The cloaked man identifies the monster with certainty. It's a gas dragon. A close-up view reveals the gas dragon's menacing face, its eyes glowing faintly as it lets out a guttural hiss, preparing to confront the intruders in its lair. Irumas, clutching a dagger, groans in despair. They have no choice but to fight the terrifying beast. The cloaked man, however, remains unnervingly calm. He simply observes the scene and says, "I see," his expression unreadable as he seems to notice something else entirely. While Raraja growls at the dragon, Irumas glances at the cloaked man, completely bewildered by the faint smile now on his face. He can't understand how anyone could smile in a situation like this. But the cloaked man isn't looking at the dragon, he's looking past it, remarking with an air of grim satisfaction, "So they can show up here." While Irumas was lost in confusion over the cloaked man's smile, a powerful force ripples through the chamber, causing him to cry out as the ground itself seems to shake. Suddenly, Irumas yanks a terrified Raraja out of harm's way just as a new monster appears, a giant, grotesque dragonfly-like creature, far larger than any normal insect. A whole swarm of the giant dragonflies descends upon them. The cloaked man warns Irumas that the creatures use a breath attack, a dangerous weapon that a thief like him wouldn't be able to survive. Faced with overwhelming odds, Irumas is paralyzed by fear. His mind flashes back to his past, remembering how his clan would use him as a human shield in moments like this. He grips his weapon, completely unsure of what to do. As Irumas freezes, the cloaked man gives a clear order, "You focus on parrying." The command cuts through his panic, and with a determined look, Irumas acknowledges the instruction. With newfound resolve, the cloaked man declares, "Let's do this." At the same time, Raraja leaps into action with a fierce arf, fearlessly charging towards the monsters as Irumas watches with a mix of shock and determination. Without a hint of fear, Raraja leaps directly at the towering gas dragon, her sword held high as she prepares to strike the massive beast head-on. Raraja deftly dodges the dragon's snapping jaws, using its head as a springboard to launch herself higher into the air, leaving both the dragon and Irumas stunned by her agility. Now airborne, Raraja turns her attention to the giant dragonflies, intercepting one mid-flight and slicing it down with a powerful, acrobatic strike. She continues her assault, striking the gas dragon's tough hide and then effortlessly twisting her body to slice through another one of the giant dragonfly creatures. Watching her fight, Irumas is in awe. He admits to himself that Raraja, the one they called garbage, possesses incredible talent, perhaps even genius. He reasons she must have received more blessings from the gods than he did. But as he looks at the colossal gas dragon, reality sets in. Despite Raraja's genius, they are lacking in everything: levels, equipment, and experience. He knows that as they are, neither of them could truly defeat the dragon. Suddenly, one of the giant dragonflies buzzes menacingly close to Irumas. He braces himself and, remembering his role, prepares to parry the incoming attack. Panicking as more monsters swarm him, Irumas wildly swings his daggers, desperately trying to create space and screaming for them to get away from him. Irumas manages to block an attack but is struck by the dragonfly's breath weapon. He cries out in pain as he realizes the dragon must possess the same ability. The cloaked man looks on, confirming they use their breath as weapons. A manic grin spreads across Iruma's face. He remarks that while he'd only heard of a dragon's breath in fairy tales, he'd always dreamed of seeing it one day, though preferably from as far away as possible. A fiery explosion erupts as the dragon's breath attack hits the ground. The blast sends Raraja flying, and she cries out as the heat washes over her. Irumas can only watch in shock. In response to the fiery blast, Irumas slams a potion or magical item onto the ground, causing shards of ice to erupt and spread across the floor, likely to counter the heat. As Raraja continues her fight, Irumas finds himself overwhelmed by the sheer number of dragonflies still swarming the chamber, wondering how many more there could possibly be. Just as a dragonfly is about to strike a distracted Irumas, Raraja leaps in with a fierce bark, intercepting the monster and cutting it down in a flash. As Raraja lands after saving him, Irumas expresses his thanks. He looks at the scene in awe as Raraja effortlessly clears out the remaining dragonflies around them. Irumas finally experiences the dragon's breath he'd longed to see, but it's nothing like the fairy tales. It's a terrifying reality of scorching heat, a horrible stench, and the sting of burning flesh. As Raraja growls at the dragon, Irumas glances at the cloaked man, bewildered by the faint smile on his face. I don't understand him at all. How can he smile in a situation like this, he wonders. But the cloaked man isn't looking at the dragon, he's looking at something else, remarking, so they can show up here. While Irumas was lost in confusion over the cloaked man's smile, a powerful force ripples through the chamber. He cries out as the ground itself seems to shake, heralding the arrival of a new threat. Reacting instantly to the danger, Irumas yanks a startled Raraja out of harm's way. He screams in alarm as the new threat reveals itself to be another monster, emerging right before their eyes. Another giant dragonfly monster appears before a terrified Raraja and Irumas, adding to the chaos of the battle as he calls out its name in alarm. As the swarm of dragonflies attacks, the cloaked man reiterates his warning that their breath is a potent weapon. He reminds Irumas that as a thief, he stands no chance of surviving a direct hit, unlike a heavily armored fighter. The overwhelming danger triggers Irumas' past trauma. He recalls how his old clan would have used him as a human shield in this exact situation. Now, facing the gas dragon, he's frozen with indecision, wondering what to do. The cloaked man's voice cuts through Irumas' fear with a direct command: focus on parrying. The order gives him a clear purpose, and Irumas steals his resolve, acknowledging the instruction with a sharp "got it." With the plan set, the cloaked man readies for battle. Inspired by his declaration, Raraja lets out a courageous "arf" and fearlessly charges into the fray, stunning Irumas with her bravery. Raraja leaps directly towards the monstrous head of the gas dragon, her sword poised to strike in a display of incredible, almost reckless, courage. She masterfully uses the dragon's own head as a platform, dodging its attack and launching herself into the air. Her agility leaves Irumas watching in disbelief from the ground. While airborne, Raraja pivots and dives between two giant dragonflies, skillfully dispatching one of the monsters with a powerful slash. She lands a glancing blow on the gas dragon's hide before twisting and using her momentum to slice clean through another one of the dragonfly creatures. Irumas watches her incredible performance, forced to admit that the girl they called garbage has a rare talent for combat, a genius, even. He concludes she must have received far more blessings from the gods than he ever did. Yet, despite Raraja's skill, Irumas knows they are hopelessly outmatched. Staring at the massive dragon, he acknowledges that they lack the levels, equipment, and experience to have any real chance of victory. His thoughts are interrupted as a dragonfly monster buzzes towards him. He grits his teeth, lifts his dagger, and prepares to parry the attack, screaming in defiance. Soon, he is swarmed. Overwhelmed and panicking, Irumas wildly flails his daggers, screaming at the monsters to back off and give him space. He parries one dragonfly but is hit by the breath of another. The attack is fast and painful, making him realize with dread that the gas dragon likely has a similar, much more powerful breath weapon. Amidst the chaos, a strange, manic grin spreads across Iruma's face. He thinks about how he'd only read of dragon's breath in stories and always wanted to see it, though he'd much rather have seen it from a safe distance. The gas dragon unleashes a torrent of fire. The blast misses its main target but sends Raraja flying, who cries out from the intense heat as Iruma's watches in horror. In a quick reaction, Iruma's throws down a magic item, causing a wave of ice to spread across the dungeon floor, likely as a countermeasure to the dragon's fire. Just as Iruma's is about to be struck from behind, Raraja dives in with a fierce bark, saving him. He thanks her as she lands, and together they watch as she quickly eliminates the rest of the swarming dragonflies, leaving them in awe of her skill. With the smaller monsters gone, Iruma's finally gets a clear view of the dragon's breath. It's not a magnificent sight from a fairy tale, but a terrifying force of nature, filled with scorching heat and the foul stench of burning flesh. The battle comes to a halt. The cloaked man stands alone, facing the immense gas dragon. From off-panel, a voice wonders what the cloaked man is truly planning, bringing the chapter to a tense cliffhanger. The swordsman, Iram, braces himself for a perilous encounter. Before him stands the ferocious gas dragon, its maw wide open, ready to unleash destruction. Chapter 4, titled Raraja 3, begins, throwing us right into the heart of a desperate battle. A young, spiky-haired boy and a small girl named Raraja watch in terror as the massive dragon descends upon them within the dungeon's ruins. While his companions are frozen in fear, Iram calmly faces the growling beast, assessing the situation and planning his method of attack. Without hesitation, Iram leaps into action. He closes the distance in an instant, striking the dragon's leg as the beast swipes at him with its powerful claws. As he evades, Iram knows he can't afford a prolonged battle. He thinks to himself that his only option is to avoid a war of attrition against such a formidable foe. He considers his magical arsenal. Spells are an option, but weaker ones like a Halito won't be effective. A stronger spell like La Halitos might work, but it's not a guaranteed success. Dismissing a defensive or long-range strategy, Iram decides against using barrier spells. He resolves to handle this fight up close and personal, the old-fashioned way. The dragon lunges, attempting to bite Iram, who deftly dodges and counters, slashing at the creature's head in a fluid, deadly dance. Seeing an opening, Iram prepares to unleash a powerful skill. The thief watches in disbelief, questioning his reckless proximity to the dragon. Confident, Iram simply tells him, "You'll see," as he channels energy into his fist for a move called Ziaf Laikaf, Fist of God. With a final cry of Sitsalik, Iram unleashes the spell. A massive burst of energy erupts from his fist, engulfing the dragon completely. In the aftermath, the dragon lies smoking and defeated. As Iram walks away from the carnage, the thief hesitantly asks if the fight is over. Raraja, however, is simply stunned into silence. Suddenly, a treasure chest materializes. Forgetting the danger, Raraja yelps with excitement and runs towards it like a happy puppy, only to be stopped by Iram's stern command, "Don't touch it." Raraja stops in her tracks, confused. The thief, looking at the chest, turns to Iram and asks, "Well? This is your job, isn't it?" The thief doesn't understand. He questions the logic of dealing with a potentially trapped treasure chest right after such a grueling battle. Iram looks back at him, his reasoning cold and simple. He points out the obvious: why would we ignore a chest when we have a thief in the party? The thief worries about a trap that could wipe them all out. Iram responds with chilling pragmatism, stating that he himself probably won't die, but if it's a poison needle or stunner, the thief will be the one to get hit. The thief looks up, a somber realization dawning on him. He reflects on Iram's words, murmuring that here in the dungeon, death isn't the end. He knew that party members could be revived at a temple, but he questions if anyone can truly accept such a grim reality. It's a risk he's all too familiar with. He looks at Iram's hooded figure, thinking that for him, the harsh logic of dungeon life is as natural as breathing. He wonders, is this guy really the same kind of creature as me? With a heavy sigh, the thief resigns himself to the task. "I'll give it a go," he says, "but don't get your hopes up." His party members misinterpret his meaning, with Iram noting that they won't know the item's value until appraisal anyway. Crouching before the treasure chest, the thief takes a deep breath. He prepares to face the potential dangers lurking within, his past experiences weighing heavily on his mind. Here goes nothing, he mutters, beginning his inspection. He finds no tripwires or external mechanisms. Cautiously, he scrapes his knife near the lock, but there's still no response. Iram notes his careful observation, remarking, "You're good for someone of your level." The thief is taken aback, asking if he's being sarcastic and denying he ever learned from anyone. It wasn't a skill he was taught, but one he was forced to acquire. His thoughts darken as he recalls his past. He explains that the thief class is often just a role for the small and lightweight. He wasn't seen as a skilled specialist, but as a disposable meat shield, a grim reality that shaped his cautious approach. The thief's traumatic memories continue. He recalls how his former comrades were killed off one by traps, and all he could do was watch helplessly. He vividly remembers the gruesome ways they died, incinerated, electrocuted, mutilated. He tried to memorize every trap that killed them. The memory of one particular girl, Rhea, comes to the forefront. He remembers Rhea as being perpetually cheerful, often singing to herself, a beacon of light despite being thrown into the cruel life of their clan. The flashback shows Rhea approaching a chest. He recalls thinking she had a pretty voice. The scene shifts ominously to a view from inside the keyhole, looking out at her innocent eye. The memory reaches its horrific climax. A poison needle shoots from the lock, striking Rhea in the eye. She lets out a final gasp and falls, as the clan leader callously declares her a useless bitch. The clan's brutality continues as the leader orders his men to strip Rhea's corpse of any useful items. He then turns to the horrified thief, his next word sealing the boy's fate as the next usable item. The flashback ends, leaving the haunting image of a fallen adventurer in a desolate corridor, a needle protruding from her eye, a stark reminder of the cost of failure. Shaken but determined, the thief returns to the present. Announcing that the lid and box are clear of traps, he steels his nerves to tackle the keyhole, the source of his deepest trauma. While he works, he notices that Iram and Raja haven't backed away, despite the potential danger. He sees Raja dozing off and wonders to himself, is this what being in a real party is like? He looks at his two strange companions. A swordsman with a chilling philosophy and a girl who acts like a puppy. He questions if this trio, thrown together by circumstance, can even be called a party. As he delicately probes the lock, the silence is broken. Iram calls out to him, and at the same time, Raja asks him, "What's your dream?" The thief pauses, hesitant to share his deepest desire. He asks if they would laugh if he told them he wants to go beyond the edge of their flat world, to see what lies past the steep cliff at its end. Iram philosophizes that all adventurers have their reasons, be it money, power, or strange weapons. The important thing is the choice to venture into the dungeon. This perspective, which includes even those who sacrifice rookies, is something the thief had never considered. The thief asks if Iram has an objective. With a cryptic smile, Iram confirms he does, stating he's got his hands full with his own adventure, but that the thief wouldn't believe him if he told him. Just as the thief is about to press him for details about his objective, his tools find their mark. With a final, sharp asterisk click asterisk, the lock is disengaged. The chest lid pops open. The sudden movement startles the thief and wakes up Raja, who lets out a surprised bow. All three of them lean in to see the fruits of their labor. The chest is filled with gold, jewels, and other treasures. Overwhelmed with relief and success, the thief clenches his fist and exclaims, "All right." Iram gives a simple, sincere well done. The thief, flustered by the genuine praise and the emotional rollercoaster, grumbles that getting a compliment from him doesn't make him feel any better. A montage flashes by, showing scenes of their difficult journey, battling monsters, Iram bagging the loot, Raja eating rations, and finally, their triumph over the trapped chest. The scene shifts to a vast, rocky wasteland under a setting sun. The thief stands alone, gazing out at the horizon, finally free from the confines of the dungeon. Having returned to the dungeon entrance, the party collapses from exhaustion. We made it back, the thief pants, while Rara Raja flops onto the ground with a tired laugh. Only Iram remains standing. The thief is already fantasizing about getting back to the inn and sleeping in the stables. However, Iram quickly shatters his dream of immediate rest, reminding him it's not over yet. Iram explains their next step: they need to find a bishop at the tavern to appraise their loot to avoid being cheated by the weapon shop. The thief, confused, asks why he's carrying the treasure in a body bag. Realizing that even free lodging in the stables won't cover the cost of food, the thief grudgingly agrees to head to the tavern. As they walk, Iram calls out to the lagging boy, questioning why he's so quiet when there's money to be made. Before the thief can answer, their path is blocked by another group of adventurers. A large, fully armored knight recognizes Iram and greets him with a sarcastic jab, musing that he must be disappointed to return with a couple of living kids instead of some dead guys. Iram retorts to the knight's comment, asking if a character named Hawk is dead. A female elf in their party chimes in, calling Hawk an idiot and implying he's too stubborn to stay dead. The other adventurers lament a recent failure involving a famous thief named Hawkwind, who apparently died to an exploding box trap. The young thief is stunned to hear such a legendary name, realizing he is in the presence of a very high-level party. His blood runs cold as he puts the pieces together. He's standing before Sesma's party, a team of all-stars. He panics, thinking he asked the wrong person about his dream, while Rara Raja remains blissfully unaware. The elf woman approaches Iram, teasing him. She mentions hearing from someone named Ain that he had finally put a party together. She looks over his new companions, noting that Ain had only mentioned the girl. Iram tries to brush them off, but the jovial knight insists, telling him not to worry and offering to buy everyone drinks to celebrate their successful return. With a booming voice, the knight rallies the group, declaring that it's time for some celebratory drinks. As they walk, the knight asks Iram for his honest opinion on his new party members. Holding his bag of loot, Iram pauses, choosing his words carefully. The thief listens as the knight gives his own assessment: they have potential. What they lack is experience. The knight seems satisfied with this observation. The knight claps the thief on the back, exclaiming it's high praise. He congratulates both the young man and Little Miss Garbage. The thief is startled, and Rara Raja responds with happy yelps. The knight declares they can discuss everything over drinks and begins dragging the bewildered thief along, insisting that nothing beats a good drink after an adventure. But the knight's casual use of the name Garbage strikes a chord. Something inside Rara Raja shifts. She feels her throat tighten, as if she's about to speak for the very first time. As the knight calls out Garbage one more time, Rara Raja stops. The dismissive name echoes, and the happy-go-lucky expression vanishes from her face. Iram pauses, sensing the sudden change in the air. With a fierce look of determination, a voice screams in her mind, "You better remember this." She takes a breath, ready to reclaim her identity. In a powerful, defining moment, she turns and shouts with all her might, casting off the name that had defined her suffering: "My name's Raraja." The adventurers, now a more cohesive group, continue their journey toward the town as the sun sets on the horizon. Later, at a bustling tavern, the newly formed party assesses their treasure. Iram reflects that while the loot could have set them up for decades in other lands, by the dungeon standards, it was all cheap. The chapter ends as the thief rests on a bed of straw. He realizes that despite the meager rewards, he never considered leaving. He accepts that this struggle, this exhaustion, is what it truly means to be an adventurer. In a grand hall, a sister announces the safe return of Raraja's team. A man named Rarada complains about being dragged along on another dungeon crawl. The sister smiles, noting that Rarada has gotten used to it, and tells him she has a suggestion. The sister offers Rarada a job, salvaging equipment from the unclaimed bodies of the deceased, for which she'll pay. Thinking it will be an easy task, Rarada enthusiastically agrees. However, the grim reality of the task quickly sets in. Faced with a mangled corpse, a horrified Rarada recoils, wondering how he's supposed to remove the equipment and what could have possibly killed the man. Rarada looks out over a room filled with the bodies of fallen adventurers, overwhelmed by the sheer number of them he has to process. In the foreground, his companion Irumas looks on. He struggles with the task, realizing the armor is stuck to the dried flesh of the corpses. As the sister and the hooded Sesma watch, a panel displays the gruesome tools provided for the job: a saw, a chisel, and a hammer. Observing the scene, Sesma remarks that the sister seems to be happy. She playfully asks if she really looks that way, and Sesma confirms that she appears to be in high spirits. Sesma adds that he never thought he'd see the day she would have companions of her own. The comment startles both Rarada and Irumas, with Irumas letting out a surprised woof. The sister clarifies that she was talking about how she sees them, not him. Sesma admits he hadn't thought of them that way. He then decides to accompany them on their next outing, stating he needs to get a few things. The sister winks, realizing he means to go shopping. She cheerfully calls over to Rarada and Irumas to join them. The sister affectionately pats Irumas on the head. He closes his eyes, enjoying the attention, before turning and running off with a happy yap. Finally finished with the grim task, an exhausted Rarada looks over the sorted bags of equipment. Meanwhile, the sister, giving Irumas a piggyback ride, cheerfully reframes the ordeal as good training. As Rarada looks on, the sister tells Irumas that she can't leave this to him, so she'll do him the favor of coming along. The group makes their way through a crowded, lively marketplace filled with adventurers and stalls selling various wares. As they walk, Rarada privately wonders if the sister is actually going to pay for anything. The sister mentions that getting proper equipment for Irumas is important, while Sesma states he'll just share his opinion. Rarada briefly imagines Irumas wielding a sword, thinking it would be a nice sight. His fantasy is immediately shattered by the realization that the swordsmanship he pictured was absolute garbage. Rarada quickly dismisses his thought, saying it's nothing. Irumas gives a confused "arf" in response. The sister, meanwhile, simply smiles with amusement, saying, "Oh, my." Irumas perks up at the sight of a food stall. Rarada is amazed he still has an appetite after their recent work. Sesma gently pats the boy's head, telling him they'll eat later, much to Irumas' disappointment. Rarada reflects on the situation. He considers the errand a small price to pay compared to what his old clan put him through, and since he's getting money and equipment out of it, he decides it would be stupid to argue. The group arrives at a stone building with a wooden balcony. Rarada looks up and asks if this is the place they're looking for. They stand before a sign that reads Catlob's Trading Post. Upon seeing it, Sesma remarks that the name sounds familiar. Rarada asks if something is wrong, but Sesma quickly says no. Irumas wonders if Sesma used to frequent the place. The sister becomes hopeful, suggesting that the more leads Sesma finds to his past, the better. She even wishes that regaining his memories might stop his obsession with exploring dungeons. Sesma turns with a grim smile, his eyes shadowed by his hood, and declares flatly, "That won't be happening." The group is taken aback by his cold statement. Irumas lets out a bark, and Rarada asks what Sesma meant about his past. Sesma simply tells the concerned sister that it's nothing. Seeing Rarada's confusion, the sister quietly pulls him aside. She explains that Sesma doesn't remember anything from before he was resurrected, a fact underscored by a haunting image of his former, ghastly undead self. They speculate on his past, concluding he wasn't the type to be tricked by a succubus, and that such a death would have made resurrection impossible anyway. Putting the mystery aside for now, the sister announces it's time to head in, certain they will find good equipment inside. Inside Catlob's Trading Post, the sister excitedly presents a beautiful, ornate sword she has found, exclaiming, "Look! Isn't this wonderful?" Rarada is amazed, questioning if it's a magic weapon and expressing surprise that a shop in this town would have such an item. The hooded Sesma observes the glowing blade and remarks that it might be a good weapon for garbage. The group stands inside the well-stocked armory, surrounded by an impressive array of weapons, shields, and armor sets lining the walls and displays. Rarada looks around the shop with a determined expression, thinking that even if the legendary Lord's garb isn't available, they might still find some high-quality elven chainmail. While Sesmar comments on his own preference for a blade called a mage masher, the group is suddenly interrupted by the arrival of another person. Both Rarada and Ayarumas turn in surprise as a voice announces the presence of customers. A mysterious, blindfolded woman with long white hair emerges. The sister greets her warmly as Sister Ainiki. Ainiki, in turn, says it's been a while, cryptically adding that she smells the scent of a cold, northern sea. Ainiki continues her assessment, stating she also smells old ashes and identifies Ayarumas by name. She then turns to Sesmar, expressing that she hadn't expected him to still be alive. Sesmar coolly replies that he's not dead, at least. Meanwhile, Rarada is puzzled, having expected the shop to be run by a dwarf, not an elf. Ainiki continues to size up the group, sensing that sparkle of a honed diamond in Ayarumas, while dismissing Rarada as still being in the rough. She bluntly calls them rookies, causing Ayarumas to let out a little laugh, and Rarada to look flustered. Rarada nervously approaches the counter and places the bundle of salvaged armor down, explaining that they are here to sell the items on behalf of the temple. As Ainiki begins to inspect the salvaged goods, Rarada stares at her blindfold, silently wondering if she's actually able to see what she's doing. Ainiki notes that many of the armor pieces are damaged. Rarada defensively retorts that it wasn't his fault, as he had to forcefully tear them from the bodies. Ainiki's casual suggestion to grind down the corpses makes Rarada feel sick. Ainiki then turns her attention to Rarada. Correctly identifying him as a thief, she demands that he take out his tools, specifically his lockpicks. Rarada begins to sweat, worried that she'll discover he doesn't have any. Rarada shamefully lays out a small set of crude, makeshift tools. Ainiki looks at them with disgust, asking if they're turds. An embarrassed Rarada insists that they're all he needs. Ainiki picks up one of the crude tools and asks if he made them himself. Rarada defensively asks if that's a problem, admitting that he created the ill-made tools out of a desperate need to survive within his clan. Ainiki offers to set him up with a more decent set of tools. Aware that he lacks what it takes to survive in a dungeon, Rarada swallows his pride and quietly accepts her offer with a simple, thanks. The sister arranges for the payment to be sent to the temple after the appraisal. Sesmar, ever detached, tells them to do as they like, stating his belief that everyone should be free to raise their level however they see fit. Watching Rarada get new tools, Ayaruma says, "Must be nice for you, having it so easy." Rarada can only offer a flustered expression in response to the comment. Ainiki asks Rarada if he wants his own blade. She then questions the need for a thief to have weapons or armor, suggesting he shouldn't be fighting at all. A shocked Rarada interprets this as her telling him to go die. The sister steps in, defending Ayarumas by pointing out that he serves as a frontline fighter for their party. Hearing this, Ainiki relents and generously offers to pay for whatever Ayarumas chooses. Pleased with the offer, the sister announces she'll take Ayarumas to pick out some new equipment. Ayarumas, who has been referred to as a girl by the sister, responds with an enthusiastic yap as they head deeper into the shop. The sister's expression turns somber as she looks at the thick, metal collar around Ayaruma's neck. She expresses her desire to remove it but acknowledges that trying to break it forcibly would risk hurting the child. To lift his spirits, the sister invites Ayarumas to find a nice set of armor and a sword. However, Ayarumas is completely overwhelmed, staring at the glittering, masterfully crafted weapons and lamenting that he can't possibly choose from such an impressive selection. Overwhelmed by the quality of the weapons, Ayarumas asks Ainiki if they were found in a dungeon. Ainiki confirms that some of the items on display were indeed recovered from dungeons. However, Ainiki clarifies that while some weapons were found, most were crafted by the hand of men, not discovered in the truest sense of the word, leaving Ayarumas looking puzzled. Standing before a wall adorned with magnificent swords and axes, Ainiki explains that she is referring to a special category of items, those that people would call a legendary. Ayaruma stares, captivated, at his own wide-eyed reflection in the polished surface of a metal gauntlet. He whispers the word legendary in awe as he looks at the powerful items before him. Sesmar calls out to Ayarumas, asking if he also desires a legendary weapon. With a slight grin, Sesma admits that he himself feels as though he has been seeking one. Standing amidst the vast collection of weapons, Sesma looks down and adds a philosophical counterpoint, stating that ultimately, any weapon is just a means to an end. Iruma's quietly repeats Sesma's words, a means. Sesma elaborates on his point, saying that while having a powerful weapon would be convenient, if he doesn't, he will simply find other ways to proceed. Iruma's reflects on Sesma's philosophy. He looks at the ordinary knife Sesma wields and wonders if he could ever reach that level of strength just by swinging a simple blade. Having listened to his pragmatic speech, Ainiki gives Sesma a weary look and states, "This is why I don't like you." Without a word, Sesma turns and walks out of the shop. Just as Sesma leaves, a tall, ominous figure appears in the doorway, silhouetted against the bright light. The newcomer wears a distinct, patterned cloak, and their eyes glow menacingly from beneath their hood. Iruma stares at the new arrival with a look of pure shock as an ominous shadow is cast over the once tranquil shop, leaving the chapter on a tense cliffhanger.